Good morning, Francis. Good morning, Stephen. How are you?
Morning. Quite good in lockdown.
Yes, good morning. Very well, thank you.
Good. Well, thank you. You've tasked me with chairing this. I'll do my best. But it's lovely to see you both fresh and early this morning. My name is Barry Cahir and I'm a solicitor in Beecham's in Dublin. So maybe, Francis, if you would introduce yourself.
Francis, New Screens, Moon Beaver, solicitor in London.
Stephen Alexander, advocate in Jersey at Morant.
As you can see from the mess behind me, I'm in my office this morning. We're having one of our first remote creditors meeting, but I have been at home mostly, and it's different. There are pluses and minuses, but I must say it's nice to be in the office and have a full suite of photocopiers, scanners and IT services for a few hours. Yeah. Francis, you're very well branded there.
Yes, I'm very well branded. I've been ordering stuff online. That's part of what I'm spending my time doing. I've been working in our local office near my home out in Essex, but we did get all the staff home before lockdown. The only thing we had to do really was get additional laptops for support staff, because obviously we don't normally envisage them working from home, and get them sort of trained on the technology. And we've all gradually been learning Zoom and Teams and every other form of virtual meeting that people seem very keen on now. So it's worked pretty seamlessly, I think. The challenges, I think, are more around keeping a cohesive team. So we have a departmental meeting on Zoom once a week, and we do a survey of the staff once a week, trying to get them to remember that they have to also still do things like marketing as well as the actual day-to-day work, because there'll be a temptation to just sit in your room and do time recording and emails and everything, and actually we do still need to engage with clients, so we're trying to make sure they do that. We're doing online quizzes with clients and charades, all sorts.
Very good, very impressive. And Stephen, how is it going for you?
Yeah, similar. We've been working from home since March, and I think after getting through the practicalities of getting the remote system set up in your house, it's been okay. I think, again, as Francis says, I think the challenge is making sure that employees stay focused and they stay, they're reminded that they're a valued part of the team, and I guess the importance of phone calls and video calls are important for that, really. The only other thing I think from my part is because I'm in court quite a lot, I found the preparation for court much harder without having the physical files in my possession, not being in the office. It's been harder preparing for hearings, so that has been more of a challenge, I think, but muddled through so far.
Is that because you're reading online? Sorry.
Well, yeah, most of the hearings have been done by video. In fact, all of the hearings I've done so far have been by video. And we are entitled to go into the office, but there has been a limited availability to do that.
And the judiciary and court service have responded well to that, remote hearings and paper bundles and all of that kind of thing.
I think the High Court in London has adapted remarkably well, with some zeal, I think. And so even the big applications courts and things are working really well on Skype for Business, and the business and property courts generally. They've got C filing anyway in the High Court for insolvency, and so everything is filed electronically, and we have to have younger people do the bundles and electronic tabbing and all the things that have to be done, but that's been really good. The regional courts, the lower courts, county courts and things, I think are more troublesome. They're doing telephone hearings more often than not, but the admin backup, because they're not so well served by IT, is much slower, a lot of adjournments and so on and so forth. But the courts here have been really good. They're really adapting to it. There was a hearing, an opposed hearing. Somebody applied to adjourn a 5-week trial, which is to happen in June, what a case called One Blackfriars, and they were refused. They are having a virtual trial with cross-examination and everything for 5 weeks online.
That's very impressive. I mean, one of the challenges in jurisdictions like ours, where you have the split bar, is normally you have a team in court together, and you can eyeball your advocate, or your advocate can pass a note to you to find a document or a piece of paper, or you can read the body language of the court much easier. You can see how they're reacting to different lines of questioning or areas, and that's challenging.
I think it's adapting though, because again, it depends what media you use. I mean, I've been using Zoom mainly, but we just had one where the opponents wanted to await face-to-face mediation, and the court said, no, you must do virtual mediation. A lot of parties, but they're very adaptable with separate breakout rooms, and you can comment to people and everything. I think it's just getting more adept at that, and I'm not entirely there yet, but practicing.
You sound ahead of me, I have to say. I haven't managed to do breakout rooms just yet. The usual breakout is when small people break out behind me. That's the only breakout I've been able to manage.
Dogs and cats in my case.
And Stephen, have you noticed any uptick in the volume of insolvency cases, or any difference?
It's actually not really, Barry. No big difference really at the moment. I mean, as expected, there's been more insolvency inquiries. I think more ad hoc bits of advice, but no sort of mega cases to report on. But I'd expect
you're like us. I mean, the lawyers don't take the appointment in your jurisdiction, isn't that right?
Correct. Yes. Yeah, the lawyers can take the appointment. But I think later this year it may change. Third or fourth quarter, my expectation is we might see a bit more.
And Francis, how about you?
Yeah, I think it's the same in England and Wales. There's a lot of advisory, and all the IPs are saying it's all advisory and a lot of sort of hooking in work, but not a huge amount of actual insolvency. And everybody is anticipating October, when the government support slows down. I think that's the problem. The government support is postponing the failure of a lot of businesses, I think, and because the additional support keeps being announced, so everybody hangs on.
Yeah.
Yes, it's the same here. I mean, I suspect there are a lot of businesses effectively on life support, with rent-free periods and salary supports. It's only when those supports are removed we'll see the true extent of the damage.
Yeah.
We have seen a bit of, mostly driven by the UK, so some of the high street retail has had a spillover. It doesn't tend to be on the same scale. So, for example, I was involved in Warehouse and Oasis. There were 250 employees here, but it's literally a tenth of the number of employees that were involved in the UK businesses. Debenhams was a bigger case here, and the creditors meeting I'm going to this morning actually is Aldo Shoes Ireland, but that's a worldwide restructuring insolvency. So a lot of, I would say, UK and international retail have been the first casualties, but local trading businesses, because of the supports, there's no obvious signs yet, but again, a lot of advisory.
A lot of that retail was teetering anyway, wasn't it? That's the thing, and it's just been tipped over the edge first.
I think for a lot of cases, it's the tin hat, or whatever the phrase is, that it's the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah.
Mixing my metaphors. And Francis, do you anticipate that everybody will be trying to requalify as insolvency practitioners? Has there been any change in the makeup of the profession over the last number of years?
Well, we're certainly seeing a lot of introductory courses to insolvency being touted on the internet, as we did in the last, in the financial crisis, insolvency for conveyancers and that sort of thing. The problem with the insolvency profession, I think, in the UK is that there wasn't a big collapse after the financial crisis. There were low interest rates and so on and so forth. We had a lot of talk of zombie companies. And as people have retired from the profession, the senior profession, they haven't been replaced. There's certainly, even before this, was a lot of scrabbling around for experienced sort of senior managers, etc. all fighting each other for recruitment. And I think if there is a tsunami of cases in the Q3, it's going to be quite difficult for the profession to manage, because there is a shortage of people, I think. Experienced people, anyway.
And we'll come back to you in relation to England and the UK, Francis, but Stephen, with that in mind, and we are anticipating a significant number of cases, have there been any insolvency-specific measures introduced in your jurisdiction?
There's been no legislation brought in yet in response to the pandemic. What we've had is a statement, a practice statement by government, which relates to wrongful trading. And it's in effect a comfort statement which makes it clear that directors of companies in the current economic climate are unlikely to be found liable for wrongful trading, which is, I suppose, it's a welcome addition, not quite as robust as what's been brought in the UK, but I think nevertheless helpful. What the government's currently considering is legislation to deal with company voluntary arrangements. We don't currently have anything of that nature in Jersey, and that would be helpful, I think. At the moment, many creditor and debtor arrangements are just being dealt with informally, which is clearly unsatisfactory. So nothing done yet, but hopefully more on the horizon.
Okay, interesting, because I mean we have lots of different tools available. Like you, we haven't had any insolvency-specific measures introduced. There has been, we have a Chapter 11 equivalent we have had for a long number of years, and it's a moratorium for a period of 70 to 100 days, during which a third-party appointed examiner, who is an insolvency practitioner, has an opportunity to put together a scheme, effectively put as a debtor in possession process. And there's been talk of relaxing the entry requirements, because there are very rigid entry requirements around evidencing that the company has a capability of survival as a going concern. And there's a lot of cash flow analysis goes into that. So how can you today say with certainty what the cash flow is going to be like for the next 100 days? So there's been talk of relaxing that, but there have been no specific measures. But I'm interested in what you said, because you're talking about introducing CVAs to give informal restructurings a structure, whereas I anticipate that we'll actually be reverting much more to informal restructurings, certainly in the SME sector. I think some of these tools are world class, but they don't always suit SMEs, and especially at the smaller end of the scale. So I anticipate actually going back to things like the London rules and trying to agree standstills and informal restructurings rather than the formal. That's quite interesting. Francis, can you tell us what's happening in England and the UK?
Well, until Wednesday, it was a lot of legislation by announcement, but they finally published the bill for first reading of the corporate governance and insolvency bill on Wednesday. And that's a combination of reforms that have been long pursued but held up by Brexit, and COVID-related reliefs, urgent reliefs. So like Jersey, we have, it was announced as a suspension to wrongful trading for the 3 months, March to June, but actually what they've done is instead said there's a statutory presumption against wrongful trading. That's okay. Their announcement, although I'm not sure anybody thought that it was going to have absolutely any effect at all. Anyway, for such a short period, it makes no difference really. Secondly, they have, and this has been long coming, introduced a standalone moratorium. So you can basically apply for a moratorium with a monitor, which has to be a licensed insolvency practitioner. It was suggested it could be anybody, but a lot of lobbying from R3 and help to keep it within the profession. That's for 20 working days, and you can extend that after the 15th day by, well, with or without creditor approval or by application to court.
That's very interesting. And is that an out-of-court filing?
Yeah, and the monitor, whereas before, like you, we had a moratorium for small businesses. It was again heavily reliant on a crystal ball and cash flow projections, which the IP had to put his name to. And this is much less sort of advanced warranties by the monitor, so it's much better. And it's been a long time coming. I think there was a review in 2016, but it's been talked about for 10 or 12 years or more. So there's that. And then they've, again, a long time coming, prevention from terminating a contract just because of a insolvency.
Okay.
And there's a temporary suspension of that change if you're a small supplier. But as of the 30th of June, it will be applied to all suppliers. You can't terminate just because a business goes insolvent.
Oh, very interesting.
And then, sorry, the COVID things, they've suspended. You can't petition to wind up a company. You can't petition on the basis of a statutory demand served since the 1st of March. And any winding up order made since the 27th of April is void, declared void. So that's going to take a bit of unravelling for orders that have already been made. And who used to know what was going to happen with that? You've got to go back to court for directions. And if you do petition, you've got to show that it's the business has been unaffected by coronavirus and basically it's historic debt or something. Okay.
And this is now law. It's been through both houses?
No, first reading Wednesday, second reading is due on the 3rd of June. I mean, obviously the aim is to get it in June because all the deadlines in it are 30th of June or when this comes into force, which is sooner. But it also gives itself, the Act gives a lot of flexibility to amend by secondary legislation and to extend everything to react to the situation.
Okay. And the filing for the moratorium, does it have to have an intended outcome, like in administration? You have to pick one of three purposes.
No, there's no specific outcome. It could just be because you're trying to raise finance. And then just the final thing, which is really important, I think, and a first for us, is there's a new section to the Companies Act introduced, 26Z, I think, or A. Introducing a new restructuring plan, allowing cross-class cram down, which is a first for us, and so that's again been quite a long discussion about that, but that's coming in. Okay.
That's very interesting, and I think one of the challenges it prompts in my mind. We had hoped never to talk about it again. Is there any chance that you'll see sense and rejoin the EU as a result of this?
Well, if we hadn't spent 3 years talking about Brexit, we'd have had a lot of these reforms in years ago, but I don't think there's any chance, no, I really don't.
No. So it'd be interesting to see those new measures in action and how they'll work, for example, cross-border cases.
Yeah, we are seeing quite a bit of cross-border work at the moment, but that's that. Yeah, I don't know if that's just chance, but anyway.
Yes, and like you, I mean, I litigate as well as part of my insolvency practice, and the signals of fraud are something we often talk about. But Stephen, that's an area of work that you get involved in as well. Do you anticipate an uptake in that?
Yes, I do, Barry. I think that's an area where historically, where a recession looms, you can see frauds multiplied, and I think there hasn't been any particular cases I can think of at the moment, but the indicators are there. So I think I would be surprised if we didn't see if we didn't see more of it. There were, as we know, there were a number in 2008 and some mega cases arising as a result of that. So I wouldn't be surprised if that is a big ticket work for litigators in the coming year or two.
And it'll be interesting to see whether it's easier or more difficult to unravel, given that it's almost certainly no paper trail at the moment, given the remote working and everyone's gone digital with everything. It'll be an interesting time, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I suspect it will be. Yeah, and as you say, much of the relationships, much of the way in which this has all been recorded, it's more complex than it was 12 years ago. So we shall see how it evolves.
Well, government really had to make a decision, didn't it? They had to get money out to business fast, and they had to force banks to do that with some force. And so they had to take the decision to do that and risk the fraud. So I know that HMRC, for example, are anticipating lots of furloughing fraud. We've got a quarter of the workforce on furlough, paid for by the government at the moment. That's a lot of money. And, you know, you hear about dormant companies all applying for bounce back loans, for example, because it's instant money, £50,000. There's lots of that going on, I think.
Yes, okay. Well, thank you all very much, Francis Coulson, Moon Beaver, and Stephen Alexander Morant in Jersey. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks, Barry. Thank you. Thanks, Francis.
Bye.
Bye-bye.